Hello everyone, today we are going to start 1.5, which is describe angle pair relationships. The two vocabulary terms we're going to focus on today are complementary angles and supplementary angles. Complementary angles are angles that add up to 90 degrees, and supplementary angles are angles that add up to 180 degrees. So a way that I always remember complementary angles is if I draw a line with complementary, that looks like a 9 to me, so I always remember that's 90 degrees. For supplementary angles, if I draw a line through the S, that sort of looks like an 8 to me. So that's how I always remember that the sum is equal to 180 degrees. Here's a little bit more about complementary angles. Here are some examples. So we see that angle 1 and 2, they create a 90-degree angle when you push them together. So that's how we know that they are complementary. Adjacent. Adjacent means that they share a common side and a vertex. So for our first example, they are adjacent because they are connected. In the second example with angles 3 and 4, they are non-adjacent. They are not touching. Same thing with supplementary angles. Angles 5 and 6, they create a line when you combine them together, meaning that they equal 180 degrees, so they are supplementary. They are also adjacent, angles 5 and 6, because they are touching each other. 7 and 8, though, are not touching, so they are not adjacent. Find the measure of complementary and supplementary angles. A, we're given that angle 1 is a complement of angle 2, and the measure of angle 1 is equal to 68 degrees. Find the measure of angle 2. All right, so A, we know that angle 1 plus angle 2 has to equal what? Well, they're complementary, so they have to equal 90 degrees. All right, it also tells us here that the measure of angle 1 is 68. So we know 68 plus, and I'm going to put this as angle 2, is equal to 90 degrees. So I still need to figure out what is the measure of angle 2, and I do that by subtracting 68 from each side. And so the measure of angle 2 then is equal to 22 degrees. All right, let's look at B. Given that angle 3 is a supplement of angle 4, and the measure of angle 4 is equal to 56 degrees, find the measure of angle 3. So once again, we know that angle 3 plus angle 4 has to equal 180 degrees. Well, this time we know the measure of angle 4, so if I want to figure out what is angle 3, I'm going to add 56 is equal to 180. Subtract 56 from each side, and the measure of angle 3 then is equal to 124 degrees. And I'm done. When viewed from the side, the frame of a ball return net forms a pair of supplementary angles with the ground. Find the measure of angle BCE and the measure of angle ECD. All right, so if I look at my picture here, it's kind of hard to see. I have two angles. Angle BCE, which is this angle right here, and angle ECD, which is this angle right here. Well, what type of angles are those two? Are they complementary angles or supplementary angles? They're supplementary angles, which it also tells us here, but we can see that it creates a line. So it's going to equal 180 degrees. So I'm going to write that down. I already know that the measure of angle BCE plus the measure of angle ECD is equal to 180 degrees. But those angles are equal to certain equations. The measure of angle BCE is equal to 4x plus 8. And the measure of angle ECD is equal to x plus 2. And that's equal to 180. Now I just need to combine my like terms. So I have an 4x and 1x, that is 5x. I have an 8 and a 2, that is 10. We know they're equal to 180. Subtract 10 from each side, I end up getting 5x is equal to 170, which means x then is equal to 34. I'm not done though, because it asked what are the measures of the two angles. So I need to take my x value, plug it into that equation, as well as that equation. So we'll start with the larger angle. So 4 times 34 plus 8, that is equal to 144 degrees. Box that. And, oops, not x. And then 34, which was our x in the second equation, plus 2 is equal to 36 degrees. And you can double check by adding these up. Do they equal 180? It does. So I know I got the correct answer. Angle LMN and angle PQR are complementary angles. Find the measure of the angle if the measure of angle LMN is equal to 4x minus 2 and the measure of angle PQR is equal to 9x plus 1. All right, so first we need to decide, do these add up to 90 or do they add up to 180? And the correct answer is we know they add up to 90 because they're complementary angles. So I'm actually just going to use the equations, make this a little bit easier. So I know when I add up these equations, 9x plus 1 plus 4x minus 2, it's going to equal 90. Let's combine our like terms. 9x, 4x, that is 13x. I have a positive 1 minus 2, that is negative 1, is equal to 90. Add 1 to each side. 13x is equal to 91. So x then is equal to 7. That's not my answer though, because I wanted to know what are the two angle measures, so I have to plug x back into my equations. So we'll start with the first one, 4x minus 2. So 4 times 7 minus 2 is equal to 26 degrees. And my second equation, 9x plus 1, I have 9 times 7 plus 1, that is equal to 64 degrees. Make sure when you add those up, it adds up to 90, and it does. So I am correct. Next, we're going to learn about a linear pair and a vertical pair. So linear pair, it kind of looks like the word line. The word line's actually in it. So we know that two angles that are adjacent, they create a line. And we also see that means they're supplementary. They're equal to 180 degrees. Vertical angles, we haven't really discussed yet. So vertical angles are angles that are opposite of each other. So for example, 4 and 5 are vertical angles. And there's always like an X here that kind of helps. So me, I picture there's the letter V, so vertical. That also means that angle 3 and angle 6 are vertical angles of each other. What's nice is that this means that the measure of angle 4 is equal to the measure of angle 5 because they are vertical angles. Same thing with 3 and 6. The measure of angle 3 is equal to the measure of angle 6. So vertical angles are congruent to each other. They are the same measure. Identify all the linear pairs and all the vertical angles in the figure to the right. Let's start with vertical angles. Do you see any angles that are vertical angles? There is one. We have angle 1 and angle 5. Those are vertical angles right here. They're across from each other, and they are congruent. So I'm just going to say are vertical. We also have a few linear pairs. So one linear pair is angle 1 and angle 4. So the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 4 is equal to 180 degrees. And we see that because it creates a line. So that means that this is a linear pair. Also, the measure of angle 4 and the measure of angle 5 create a line, so 180 degrees, which means they're also a linear pair. So the measure of angle 4 plus the measure of angle 5 is equal to 180 degrees. They are also a linear pair. Now we're going to get into some tougher problems involving linear and vertical angles. All right, so I have a diagram here, and I want to solve for x and then figure out what are the measures of all the angles, angle 1, 2, 3, and 4. So right now I know angles 1 and 3. They have equations. So what type of angles are they? Is this a linear pair or vertical angles? They're vertical angles, which means they're equal to each other. So 5x minus 35 is equal to 3x plus 7. So now I need to solve for x. So I'm going to subtract 3x, subtract 3x, and that gives me 2x minus 35 is equal to 7. Next, I'm going to add 35 to each side. Those cancel, and I'm left with 2x is equal to 42. Divide by 2, divide by 2. So x is equal to 21. But remember, I'm not finished because I need to figure out what are the angle measures. So let's go back up to our diagram, scroll up. So I know that x is equal to 21, so I'm going to plug that into this equation. 3 times 21 plus 7, I end up getting 70. So that means angle 1 is equal to 70, so I'm going to write that here. 70 degrees. Angle 3 should also equal 70, right? Because we know they're vertical, they're congruent, but let's just double check that we did our math correctly. So 5 times 21 minus 35. When I plug that in my calculator, I also get 70. Next, we need to figure out angle 2 and 4. Well, if I know that angle 1 is 70, and we look at the diagram, angle 1 and angle 2 are a linear pair, which means they have to add up to 180. So if I take 180, subtract the measure of angle 1, which is 70, that is going to give me the measure of angle 2. All right, well, what is that then? So 180 minus 70 is 110. Is that equal to the measure of angle 2? So I'm going to write that here, 110 degrees. So if angle 2 is 110 degrees, that means angle 4 also must be 180 degrees. I'm sorry, 110 degrees. So I'm going to write that here. We know angle 3 is 70. And I am done. I found all the angle measures. Here's a similar problem, except for now we're focusing on angles 1 and 2, not 1 and 3. So before we start, we need to decide what type of angles do I have here? Do I have a linear pair or do I have vertical angles? And the answer is I have a linear pair. This angle plus this angle is going to equal 180 degrees. So I need to write that out. So 5x minus 22 plus 8x plus 46 is equal to 180 degrees. I need to combine my like terms, so 5x and 8x is 13x. Negative 22 plus 46 is a positive 24 is equal to 180. I need to subtract 24 from each side. So 13x is equal to 156. Divide by 13, divide by 13. So x is equal to 12. All right, so let's scroll back up. I need to figure out what the angle measure is. So x is equal to 12. So let's plug 12 in. So 5 times 12 minus 22. I'm going to write the answer down here. That is equal to 38 degrees. All right, let's plug 12 into our second equation. So 8 times 12 plus 46. That is equal to 142. Now let's double check that this is correct. If you add up 38 and 142, we get 180 degrees. And that's what it should equal. All right, so angle 1, 38. Angle 2 is 142. All right, so what is the measure of angle 3? Well, 3 is a vertical angle to angle 1, so it has to be the same measure, so 38 degrees. What is the measure of angle 4? Well, angle 4 is a vertical angle to angle 2, which means it has to be the same, so 142 degrees. Here's our last problem. We want to find angle measures in a linear pair. So I have two angles form a linear pair. The measure of one angle is 5 times the measure of the other. Find the measure of each angle. The easiest thing here to do is I need to draw a picture. So I'm going to kind of draw a linear pair. I know that one angle is 5 times the measure of the other. So I'm going to call the small angle x and the large angle 5x because it's 5 times the measure of the other angle. Now looking at this diagram, I can set up an equation. This is a linear pair, so when I add up the two angles, they should equal 180 degrees. So x plus 5x is equal to 180 degrees. Combine your like terms. 6x is equal to 180. Divide by 6 on each side. X is equal to 30. All right, so now let's double check by plugging in our angles to see what the measures really are. So this one is 30 degrees, it's just x. 30 times 5 is 150. So is 150 plus 30 equal to 180? And it is. Is 150 5 times 30? It is. And so I'm correct.